Florida Frontiers, the weekly radio magazine of the Florida Historical Society, broadcast on NPR affiliates around the state, is celebrating more than a decade on the air. In January 2016, the Florida Frontiers public television series premiered. Both programs are presented at no expense to participating stations as a community service. Florida Frontiers Radio and television cover history and culture from locations throughout the state. For thousands of years, people living in Florida have used canoes for travel, hunting, and fishing. Some of these ancient vessels have been preserved in anaerobic environments, allowing modern archaeologists to study them. Welcome to Florida Frontiers, presented by the Florida Historical Society. I'm Ben Brotemarkle. Hundreds of canoes have been discovered in Florida, some created as long as 7,000 years ago. Advancements in science and technology are allowing us to learn more about these canoes and about our history.
What we're trying to do with the canoes and with all of the other artifacts that we work with is to add a depth of understanding to our shared human experience. What it would have been like to move through these same waterways that we see now 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, what previous humans would have experienced, how they would have interacted with the world around them. And so the canoe is a really important piece in that puzzle, and so this is why we've spent so much time and energy trying to understand and preserve this very important piece of cultural heritage.
In 1926, John and Mabel Ringling completed construction on their ornate mansion called Catazan, or House of John.
Catazan in the Venetian dialect means House of John, but the museum joke around here is that it's actually the House of Mabel. This was her pet project, and really she got to fulfill all of her wildest dreams in building this house. I think John spared no expense, and she was really able to kind of realize everything that she had ever hoped for. So they fell in love with Venice early on in their travels to Europe, when they would go and look for new circus acts and just sort of enjoy Europe. And so by the time the 1920s rolls around, John is incredibly wealthy at that point. Their lifestyle has really evolved, and they decided they needed a home kind of befitting of that new status.
When Juan Ponce de Leon first spotted the Florida Keys in 1521, he thought that they looked like suffering men, so he named them Los Martires, or the Martyrs.
The salvaging started ending with basically the Civil War because lighthouses were being built. There was still some wrecking going on, but the big money maker in the 1880s was the Cuban hand-rolled cigars. It was the driving industry of Key West from 1880, 1870s up until early 1900s, World War I, 1920.
We're at the Harry T. and Harriet V. Moore Cultural Complex in Mims, Florida, just north of Titusville and Cape Canaveral and east of Orlando.
Harry Moore, of course, being an educated person, an educated man, knew that power lay in the ballot box.
This front porch in Alachua County is where Marjorie Rawlings wrote her much-loved work, including The Yearling.
The Yearling literally flowed out of her. She wrote quickly, she wrote productively, she agonized over it in some fashions as far as she was concerned, but 1937, The Yearling was produced, and immediately it was a great hit.
The Florida Historic Capitol building has been restored to its 1902 appearance. Since 1982, the building has been a museum with exhibits documenting the history of Florida government from the territorial period to the present.
Oh, it's a magnificent museum. It's really a focal point of people visiting Tallahassee. In fact, the new Capitol building is magnificent, but it's just it looks like a tall condominium. And there are beautiful interior parts of it, the legislative chambers, but they say they enjoy going and seeing the historic Capitol.
In 1957, writer Jack Kerouac was living in this house in Orlando when he found out that his novel On the Road was finally going to be published.
He did a great deal of work while he was living in Orlando. He did the final edits to his seminal novel of the 20th century, On the Road.
The Highwayman Artists are a group of mostly self-taught African-American painters who began creating Florida landscapes in the 1950s and 60s.
We used to go all over the state, set another artist's painting, and so one day we got the wild idea of becoming artists ourselves.
Florida Frontiers, the weekly radio magazine of the Florida Historical Society, has been going strong for more than 10 years, and we're looking forward to the next decade. More than 30 episodes of our television series Florida Frontiers have been produced, with new episodes coming every 8 weeks. Add Florida Frontiers to your schedule today.